What actually happens when a game you've played for years ceases to exist? What happens when all those monthly payments seemingly didn't help keep a game and its studio alive? What happens when all the hours you spent in the game, the things you built, the things you collected, the things you were proud to own, are deleted in a single second? What happens to all the people you met over time, the ones you joined forces with to pursue a shared goal? Do outsiders even understand what it means to end a game in this way? This video is my way of exploring those questions. What is it about? Right now, it's about a computer game called Dual Universe. It will be shut down on August 27th. Wait, a computer game can be shut down? Yes, if it's what's known as an MMO. That means hundreds or even thousands of players are playing online on a server, which is there to represent the game world identically for everyone and make it possible to play together, to meet in the same place, to see the same thing, to travel together, to build projects together. When this server is shut down, all players lose access to their creations, their world, and their avatars in that very moment. A virtual apocalypse, a black hole that devours everything, a digital death. This game, Dual Universe, was born in the year 2016 as a Kickstarter project. It promised players the ultimate experience, to create an entire civilization with other players. Spaceships and cities were to be built, space stations. Other planets were to be colonized. Groups were supposed to form. Players would trade with each other, compete with each other, even go to war with each other. They would unite against common enemies or fight for resources on alien worlds. It started out strong on Kickstarter. 8,166 people supported the game with over €500,000. A French studio called Novaquark launched the campaign. The vision came from a French game developer and scientist named Jean-Christophe Bailly. Together with the players, he and Novaquark first developed a proof of concept, then an early alpha version, which gradually improved over the years and became more playable until, after 6 years of development, it entered beta. Players were able to play from the very beginning, accepting bugs and setbacks willingly, testing the limits of the game, the servers, and the development process. In this time, players invested countless hours and created astonishing things, because what made this game better than most others was the ability to build spaceships, buildings, space stations. Even the landscape itself could be shaped, dug out or raised up, almost like the most successful game of all time, Minecraft, only with better graphics, smaller manipulable units, and a science fiction setting. Even before the official release in the year 2022, the game's founder left the company. Many say that was the first sign of the game's eventual downfall. Another blow came shortly before release. The developers deleted everything the players had built during the beta phase. The deletion, called a wipe, came as a surprise, especially after the studio had previously promised there would be no such wipe at launch. This first breach of trust was poorly received by most players. New rules introduced at launch created more discontent in the community. A rift began to grow between players and developers, one that would only deepen over time. At launch, the game introduced coins as a sort of reward, meant to give loyal Kickstarter backers a bonus in playtime. Because now, the game came with a monthly subscription, which, for many, marked the beginning of the end. These coins were supposed to be tradable and earnable in-game. But the ability to earn them was never implemented, and eventually, the coins were abolished altogether. If a subscription wasn't paid, anything not stored on the Sanctuary Moon became ownerless. and could be taken by other players. A new gameplay loop was born, that of the salvager, or perhaps more bluntly in German, a plunderer. So what could you actually do in this game? And what exactly did players lose? The game was set in space, in a distant future. Players began by colonizing a planet called Alioth. You started from scratch. You mined ore, refined it, and turned it into building materials. With those, you created your first base, your first home, on a moon called Haven. On this moon, you owned a plot of land where everything you had was safe from other players and safe from deletion during inactive months. A secure haven. Markets were available where you could sell your ore, and with that money, you could buy materials or even entire ships, also from other players. At first, the market system worked well, since many players created high demand for goods. The game flourished. Players settled on the main planet and built entire cities. They constructed headquarters and towers, their own marketplaces, and even programmed custom interfaces and automation systems for ships, elevators, and factories using the game's scripting system. Players sold their creations to each other and expanded to other planets. Some lay in wait in space to ambush and rob other players, space pirates. Others mined rare ores on asteroids and transported them to the markets or their massive factories that ran around the clock and consumed raw materials non-stop. Groups, organizations, friendships, and rivalries formed. The projects grew ever larger, and the servers began to buckle under the load. Novaquark had to act to manage the massive factories and the tunnels carved into the planets. A time of rule changes and unpopular updates began. Factory production became more expensive and now required new items, schematics. Many players say this was the real, final death blow to the game. A change universally hated by veteran players. The joy of building large automated factories vanished, and likely the player base halved. Those who stayed had to accept the next big change. You could no longer dig for ores. Instead, you placed mining units and played a minigame to optimize their yield, a task as dull and time-consuming as watching bread go moldy. Many had loved digging, scanning for ore veins, scanning land, digging further. But these tunnels were a nightmare for the servers, and so had to be limited. And again, a large part of the community left. Restricted industry and a glut of ore from mining units ruined the markets. Bots that used to buy basic ores to help new players were removed. More players left. With fewer people, the virtual economy crumbled even further. Frustration and discouragement spread on the servers and spilled into the forums. Novaquark responded with silence. Players noticed that patches became rarer and rarer. The game, within a year, had hit a wall. Novaquark had no plan to keep players motivated. A last-ditch attempt to spice up the game with missions and alien battles fizzled out like a match in the rain. Because big organizations, or rather, pirates, permanently dominated the alien cores, and many players had no interest in dual universes combat system, let alone in spending tons of money and time on PvP. Eventually, no patches were released anymore. Support staff stopped appearing in-game. Rumors spread that Novaquark was working on a new game with some Indian-themed setting. And in the second year, players left en masse. Suddenly, discounted yearly plans were no longer available. Only the standard monthly subscription remained. Players turned to Novaquark in tickets and forums. They wanted honest answers, but none came. Doomsayers and angry Kickstarter backers who had bought lifetime support packages voiced their rage and were banned from forums and Discord servers. Then shortly before the second anniversary, a patch was released after all, one no one had expected, a standalone version of the game. Players could now host their own servers and play by their own rules, without a subscription fee. This marked the intended exodus, and players abandoned the official server for good. Those who remained hoped for a renaissance, for new players, for the server to live on. And indeed, each week brought new players, but each week more players left. The salvagers grew fatter and richer by the day. 1 year later, in late July 2025, Nova Quark officially announced the shutdown of the server on August 27th. What remains? Memories. Memories of countless hours spent in the game, of daring flights near landings and crash landings, of helpfulness and selfishness, of good encounters and bad ones, of valuable finds, successful trades, of discovery, creativity, inspiration, and breathtaking views, and memories of new friendships made, and of friends who passed away during this time. Memories that will hopefully endure. Friendships that may live on beyond the servers. Because one thing is certain, everything earned will be deleted. Everything will vanish at the click of a button. The stories of tens of thousands of players will disappear. Like tears in rain.